Welcome everyone. We're here with the second part of our series for the Freemasonry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching again. I hope that you somehow saw the first episode. Yeah, we also already explained the concept. So we do like a series of like 7 interviews about Freemasonry, and Morgan is somewhat free to ask whatever question that she wants, and I will see that I answer the questions that I'm allowed to answer. So, and I already like explained in the previous episode, you should really watch that because it's like the framework of it all. Because I think, I doubt that the world needs like a parrot. So why should I parrot something that's already have been said over and over and over again? So, but of course, some things have to be said if you talk about a certain subject. But, what I want to achieve is that somehow explain Freemasonry and comprehensible concepts that you know out of your life, because I cannot explain something that you are not part of. That's what I say like the first episode. So imagine that I have to explain to you the game of basketball whilst you've never been in the arena, whilst also the only thing you saw is like a snippet of an action of a player throwing a ball. So it's like difficult. Same with like Freemasonry. But what I want to achieve is that I can explain the concept, but other comprehensible concepts that you know out of your life, or that you can really grasp. So yeah, everything that I say again is I speak on my own title. So I'm not speaking on behalf of the organization, nor on my mother lodge, nor on other lodges I visit. Pure on my own title. So everything that I say can be either stupid, probably, or brilliant, maybe.
Brilliant.
I don't think gravitating somewhere in between. No.
Always brilliant.
Shoot, Morgan. What do you want to find out?
Just to kind of recap from last time, just to do the segue, is we really didn't address like why you became a Freemason, like what drew you to become that, how you became it, exactly how. You know what I mean?
That's
like
great.
The how. Yeah.
Yeah, in my case, it was probably hard to not become a Freemason. Yeah, as you already know, as a kid, I was really obsessed with symbols, and that started with simple things. We had like it was back in the days, and in the 70s and early 80s, people had like an encyclopedia. They were like very expensive things. That was like the pre-Google. So everyone had to buy like a Google books, often with like a leather cover, Yeah, and therein, were all the flags of the countries, for instance, And I somehow knew them all right away. I had like this interest. All those insignias from the firework, or for instance from the army. I was always like interested in the story behind that.
Yeah.
That was one thing. Another thing was that my father was like a comic book collector, and we have like in Belgium a really culture of comic books. There's even like the Belgian school of comic books. You see, and a lot of comics that my father somehow collected were these Belgian comics, and they were like series of like Torgal. Torgal is like the hammer god. You see, like, and there were other like asterisks, about the goals, and that's our region, because we are somewhere where they see it as like on the interesting point between the German and Celtic world. But that has already like a lot of overlap, since we are some of the heirs of like in Indo-European ritual, mythological, and linguistical culture. Anyway, so this interest like symbols, but also about mythology. You see, myths and Celtic tribes, Germanic tribes, Roman army. So I was always like really invested, also like warfare. It's like a little boy, with tin soldiers and all that. And later on, and even though I am raised in like a really atheist milieu, I was somehow always like intrigued by spirituality. And things with like soothsaying and rituals alike. But this was not a thing, within my family. Of course, later on, so all this interest stayed. I got to be talking about this subject, as you know, where you know me from, the cartomancy world, talking about symbols on cards, and I always was like in those milieux. So we have like talking about philosophy, spirituality, symbolism. Of course, these were also like the climates that Freemasons frequented. For instance, and especially when I came in those international world, a lot of people were Freemason. Or they had like a mental recall came out of Freemasonry. So I always somehow knew what it was, but to be honest, it did not really attract me. Because when I watched it from the outside in, it was especially gravitating about Judeo-Christian symbolism. But I did not know much back in the day. But from the outward in, I think it's like interesting what these guys are doing. It's like mysterious, but yeah, I don't know because I like symbols, but I'm not really like interested in really Judeo-Christian symbolism per se yet at that time. So, but whenever I came in these environments, people often say, okay, go on, but you have to be a Freemason. You see, you have to come with me and be a member of a lodge. So, and then I asked for further explanation. You see, and there I found out, we have to zoom in on this topic, but not for now because it's like a big thing. Then I found out that there are like two ways of going about in regard to Freemasonry, called like regular Freemasonry and irregular Freemason. Of course, I think people now who don't know about this subject might receive irregular somehow as a pejorative, as clandestine. So that's not the case. But the idea is that the regular Freemasonry is what I somehow said the previous time. There are certain rules, so you have to accept a principe créateur, so a creative principle, whoever that is. There's a rule, so no politics, so no discussion about politics, and no discussion about religion. You see, that's like the original Freemasonry, and that is like somehow the center of union. So often people who ask me, they were somehow much more engaged in the irregular Freemasonry. And what made them all of a sudden irregular in history is that they wanted to take a stance politically, and that they wanted to somehow make up for themselves if they want to accept a creative principle. You see, so therein somehow came a schisma, so between regular and irregular. But, I don't think that I really like these words, they don't cover how it really is, I think, because they are not like clandestine, but you have to see it as, understand Freemasonry as where is your focus. But I was not interested back in the day because often they wanted to talk about politics or, and I was not interested in that. See, I was interested in politics, but in that overall concept of geopolitics, being interested in warfare and all that. And when I then somehow asked those people, okay, but what things do you discuss about politics even, and do you understand geopolitics? And then, they said no. So I was thinking, okay, what will I discuss? And I'm not even like interested in politics,
Yeah.
Nowadays, certainly not nowadays, because anyway, so I was never like intrigued by that. I thought it was like interesting, and also like in the tarot world, as you know, a lot of people, especially in the era of esoteric tarot, were Freemasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like Edward Waite, Crowley, but Crowley, he was like really irregular because he somehow got all his 33 degrees on one day somewhere in Mexico in a pool house somewhere in a back street. This was like a really interesting era. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I had this idea of, okay, that's like interesting, but it does not attract me. And, and I don't want to if I get involved, it should at least have like spiritual aid, because that was like a world I wanted to explore, because that was not something I knew, but that somehow triggered me. So, but again, I have nothing against people who are like in political Freemasonry or whatever, because I know a lot of them in person. You see, there's also like this interesting thing. So one of my best friends who is like also like a Freemason, his father is like also like a Freemason, but he's like with the Grand East of Belgium, and we have like the most great conversations, but they, father and son, have like a different perspective on Freemasonry. Each good in his own right, because his father's like a real intelligent guy, it's like, I want to do with economics, politics, really intellectual guy, but there's like another focus on Freemasonry, and that's like good in its own right. We would not feel good in his lodge. whereas he would not feel good in ours, and that's like good. I like this diversity. Long time short, but then all of a sudden, and have it here with me, so I would think that it would come in handy, since I always had like this interest in like Indo-European mythology, the Romans, the Germans, the Celts. And all of a sudden, this book came to me, and it's called, it's like a Dutch book, the North European Mystery, And this book somehow claims that modern Freemasonry is like, of course, natural heir of the medieval guilds, but from the Germanic era, so the Bauhütte. So the building, lodges, so it is like a lodge, and that it comes from the North German bonds initiates to Woden, and then I think, now it's getting interesting. You see, that was. And then I wanted to zoom more in on that item, and that's like a real popular item, and even like, because this book is like. Very old for like previous century, but even like in modern times, there we have like the book of Arvid Istad, and is somehow saying the same. So the Freemasons in the Viking Age. You see, but it's like a modern thing. You should really have this book. I think it's from, this is a reprint, but I think this book all runs for somewhere 2019. I don't know for sure.
Oh,
you see, but this was like a real interesting thing for me. Then I got to investigate it. But since I already was somehow seeing spirituality in like, how we have to call it, the new heathen societies, but these are like often like a very intellectual group. You see, especially like in Belgium. Mm-hmm. And they all pointed me out more works in that regard. And there were also like Freemasons, but they were like regular Freemasons. You see, and from there it really got fast. You see, and then I was like triggered. I wanted to find out if it's like really true. You see, and then I could see through it, and I got somehow to explain me the synchronicity, for instance, that certain concepts merge, so that, for instance, heathen concepts, somehow got soaked up in Christian symbolism. You see, and that's also like really interesting. That's also what happened during medieval time, and that's also that you can certainly recognize in the tradition of the guilds, but also in like initiation, because in the European culture is something really interesting and very layered. So and from there on I got really interested and became a Freemason.
Like that. That's interesting too, because on the regular and irregular, because if somebody, like you said, you were interested because of that, the irregular one, and you wouldn't do well in somebody else's lodge. What if somebody's coming in? Do you find where they would go correctly? Do they have to find where it is? Because I know some people, if they decide that lodge isn't for them, or that way of doing things like the irregular isn't the way for them, and then they just lose interest and walk away. Is there like, how would you work that out?
For us, regular Freemasonry.
If you can talk about it.
I can talk about it. Of course. These are things that should be said, and I think that's good to have like cooperation with people who are like interested in like Freemasonry, that you also know, okay, but he does not fit within our organization, but let's hand this guy over to another organization. That's also like interesting. But if you don't have like any spiritual aim, or if you are not open for spirituality, then you rather should not be like a member of the regular lodges, you see, because you would be getting probably disappointed. Or you might maybe find something in there, but if you look at that statistically, that would not be happen too often, you see. And also I think it's good that there is like a certain diversity. And, for me personally, I can really understand. So the father of my friend, and really see how he is like passionate in his way with his aim. Yeah. So I will never say, okay, but what we do is like the only thing to go. But I think you should choose what you want to somehow, but what attracts you authentically. That's what I really find. So I don't put any word in comparison, saying, okay, what we do is like better than the other. But I am not interested in that kind of Freemasonry. Whilst they can say, okay, but I am not interested in your kind of Freemasonry. Mm-hmm. And that's also like where the schisma was, but it's like such an interesting evolution, because then people all of a sudden they charge and they want to be hyper progressive, and they throw everything overboard, and then you can see it after a time. People go back radical to the source. That's what always happens. They swarm out, they calibrate, they renew. Yeah, that's also the human condition somehow.
Because that's interesting on why, like, for your journey, you wanted to, be there at first. I mean, because you didn't want to be in that one and did your research. But like nowadays, like why somebody should join, but if they're not getting into the right place, that's something that you would help them with, or they would have to discover these things on their own. Like why would they want to become a Freemason at first, but then making sure they get to the right place?
Yeah, but nowadays it's like easier. Back in the days, this I think it's like really an American credo. If you want to be a Freemason, or can you become a Freemason? So ask one. You see?
Oh yeah.
You're not wearing a sandwich panel, but I am like a Freemason, so that would be crazy. So, yeah, but if you know someone or someone's uncle, or you have, it also depends in which country that you are. What is like happening there? But nowadays, if you want to become a Freemason, you somehow have like an ID on if this matches your ID. So, and then you can visit like several organizations. There are several organizations. You have like regular Freemasonry. You also have like women Freemasonry. You have like mixed Freemasonry. That there's a whole palette of Freemasonries that you can choose. So people know that. So if you want to be in a lodge with like women only, so if you want to become a Freemason, and you want to do that with women only, you should visit the women's lodge. If you want to do mixed Freemasonry with men and women, you should choose for mixed Freemasonry. Or you choose, to be a Freemason only with males, and choose if you want to do this regular, old school, or like progressive way. Let's call it that way.
Yeah.
So, and nowadays there's a lot of information, you see, and if you are like a hardcore atheist and you would visit the website of the regular lodges, and there you read, okay, but there is one thing you have to accept, like a creative principle. Probably you would not accept it. So you would look further to other organizations that somehow, or if you want to do political things, then you should go to a organization who do that, I find.
Does that take away though from the core meetings? Because it always starts with the traditions, the core, like where it started, what it did, and then moving it into something else, it becomes something else then.
That's of course perspective more. That's of course perspective. I choose to be a regular Freemason, especially for that. Because I really, for myself, or whatever that's worth, value tradition, I see merit in doing these rituals by staying in there, by doing an odds where you stand for, but I don't say that it is like better than someone else does, like in another organization. And I'm not saying that by being politically correct. I say that really out of my heart. I'm not interested in that other Freemasonry. See, but I don't say that's like not good. I say that's just what I want to experience for myself. If this would be the other way around, if I would want to take a political stance or whatever, I would also do that. So I would people advise to do what you want, as long as you do it like decent, and I would hope that everyone would want to become like a Freemason, even though where you put your focus on, because the core value is that you somehow become a better person, so we would all benefit from it. See, and regular Freemasonry, this idea is, okay, we also build on society, but first build on yourself so that you are somehow like a stone in the temple of humanity. You see, with this idea, and that probably will not fit like in English, but a Dutch saying is that we say if you clean the spot before your house, and everyone does that, the whole street is clean. This idea was, of course, back in the days where the schisma really came, because they were also like in difficult times, during Enlightenment. And people said, okay, but now the community needs us. We need to somehow step away from the dogmatic idea of Catholic Church and all that, and there was something to say for that. I can understand it. And then they would say, okay, but we have to be of use to the people and not be just like spiritual here. We have to do more. And in that era, I can really understand it. And then they wanted to start to take a stance in that. You see, and then, the regular Grand Lodge, they said, okay, but you guys on the continent, you are not working according to the constitutions. You see, and then they lost regularity. See, this was a thing on the continent. You see, and later on, during Enlightenment, they also wanted to take freedom of thought. So they said, we don't accept the idea that we have to accept a creative principle. You see, but there's also like an era of thinking, getting rid of the dogmatic church and the clerical system, which was also due. You see, I don't say that they were not right in certain ways, but there's also like back in those days, and then after a time, people, it got way too loose. Then you have always like a reactionary fraction. See, and they say, okay, we want to go back to the roots. And then they got, again, accepted by the Grand Lodge in London. And then you can claim you're already regular Freemasons, but that's really, with rules, you see.
Yeah.
With the rules according to the Constitution, and it's a different approach. So, but I don't like regular and irregular. I think it might better be like traditional, and traditional Freemasonry. And I really like the center of, all the political blah blah. Don't discuss politics. Don't discuss religion. Be there. Do something spiritual. Engage in a philosophical way with that. That's what we like. Everyone doing good stuff in his own right, that's like the big advantage. If you take enough of whatever is left, what you do in Freemasonry, if you do it right, you will be a better person. So I give green light to all Freemasons, but I also give hope that we stand for each other, that we can choose the way we want to work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And there is already diversity in the palette, so it's not good. There is something for everyone.
Yeah, and that's why.
This answered your question.
Yes, no, definitely. It's just interesting, because it's always interesting, like how people do that, where they feel like they have to change something with the times, like because obviously with your thing, everyone still does politics, just not inside the thing, so you can step outside. But then, like you said, the Enlightenment era, they decided as a group they were just going to become involved to push. So it's like they could have still done those things while staying true to the traditions, but for some reason felt they needed to bring the organization out into it. Like,
that's also, there's also, and how can I put on my self-proclaimed anthropological hat? that's also what happens, with revolutionary fractions. There's also always like a small minority, and there is this idea, and then that catches somehow fire, but back in the days there was really like a standoff between the clerical Catholic Church, and the Freemasons, and then all of a sudden, church really pulled like a stunt in Belgium they should never have been done. Because all of a sudden, they said, okay, but if you are like a Freemason, you get excommunicated. Back in the days, can you understand, 19th century, that was a lot, and that was not a good strategy. Because if you know people, and I don't know if you can relate to that, most people, I think they are like somehow neutral. They are somehow gravitating around the center, out of safety or whatever, but you have always like small fractions on the outskirts, trying to somehow get a grip on the mass. See, then all of a sudden, the church does something, not so smart, because you have to have this big middle field of people who are reasonable. I can imagine that they sure wanted to go to church, but they maybe wanted to experience religion in a more free way, also not going each week, but still doing things with that. By saying something like that, if you are still like a Freemason, you get excommunicated. So then you somehow put the most reasonable Mason before a choice. Even if he is like still a follower of the church or whatever. See, and then all of a sudden you black or white, but 80% is gray. See, but then you have to make this choice.
That's unfair.
This was also things that, and of course, then it gets personal. You see, and then you get polemics, and there were also like already like papal bulls, from out of Rome that they want to somehow forbid Freemasonry or go against that, And there also erupts all those conspiracy theories, We got like Leo Taxil, doing the most blatant lies about Freemasonry, but first doing this about Catholic Church. Can you imagine what a crazy guy this is?
Yeah.
So like stirring up people, manipulation, like a sick mind, But there were also other things, like the other thing on conspiracy theory, the Illuminati. So people take Freemasons for the Illuminati, But the Illuminati, the interesting thing is for all American listeners, so they came to be in 1776. And what says that day to you?
The independence,
The American independence, which you have filed just like the 4th of July.
Yeah, just happened, yeah.
And that's also the exact date where the Illuminati somehow came to be. So there people also make like a post hoc fallacy with the nation, okay, but this somehow hangs together. And do you see on the dollar, there's like the Freemason eye, and the pyramid.
The pyramid,
it's all like, the founding fathers, they were somehow free. So this has this actual post hoc fallacy thinking, was the all-seeing eye. It's not really a Freemasonic symbol. It's the eye of providence. So we use that in rituals, but it's an already existing thing. You see, and that pyramid is come out of the Egypt mania, which came also from that. You see, but you can really explain this with logical explanations, but people somehow, if they cannot grasp it, they mythologize it.
Yeah.
And there is always, this idea. And then what we talked about, like in the previous episode, that we work with mysteries. See, and then they say, okay, but they cannot say what they do. And then you somehow get this idea, okay, but this is like danger, which I in some way can understand. But that's also my aim that I want to explain without knee-jerking that we are not dangerous. Because what we do is like, it's something that archaic societies always have done. But it's also, these conspiracy theories, and they are like interesting. They are like interesting because people want to find out about, and how famous are the movies of Dan Brown and all that. No, and Dan Brown, he was like, he did really good promotional work for Freemasonry because he could kindle the thirst for mystery or the thirst for second layers or third layers and esoteric ideas.
He's good. He has a way with words, definitely. His books are really interesting.
Who did not love Indiana Jones? Back in the days. And the quest for the Holy Grail. I was sitting with my nose against the television whilst my hair would go.
Yes. Or the Holy Grail, or the other one, the Ark of the Covenant.
But this is somehow also like a blueprint, I think, that we have inside of us somehow to resolve the enigmas or resolve the mysteries. That's somehow, and don't underestimate it, because that's somehow a mini Freemasonry. Because being ritualistic, somehow receive esoteric information, the aha moment. But all those conspiracy theories, but of course there things happened during history. Of course, there are just like people. I'm not an advocate for each individual Freemason. I can only stand in for myself, and of course there are Freemasons who are not good people. Just like there are no basket players who are not good people, or musicians who are not good people. We're just like people.
Catholics,
This crazy idea that from out of the lodges, revolutionary were planned and all that, that's like bang out of the water. And the best example for that, whenever there are like big political changes in countries, the lodges suffer from that.
Oh, that's bad.
And don't forget that we also, have to somehow be under the laws of a certain country. We also pledge an oath to the leader of the state, in the tradition. So we don't stand above that, and in history, and Belgium is like a good example for that. So our first king, King Leopold, he was like a Freemason. then you also have to think about that. Because Belgium is like a strange country. It's like we have been part of each geopolitical power around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, 1930, Belgium comes to be. So it's like a crazy circle around the land somewhere in Europe. We have like 3 official languages, so we take a little bit of German, of France, and Holland, because
Yeah.
before that we were like the Netherlands, and we
Oh,
were
yeah.
like the southern Netherlands. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's complex. Let's not
Yeah.
make this like a history lesson.
No, it's fascinating.
Freemasonry is already complex enough. But then all of a sudden, the King Leopold, he had to unify different cultural fractions.
Yeah.
Linguistical, but also political, also economical. It's like not so easy. But
Yeah.
can you understand that he could make use of already existing constructions
Yeah.
to somehow make use of that, to hit many birds with one stone, to also
Yeah.
unify people with the Masonic idea of unification, of
Yeah.
taking away what separates us and make strong what that binds us. That's like a really good way to go about it.
Yeah.
You see, and they make really good use of that. Also with those military lodges, because you should not underestimate what the military does for Freemasonry. So they had like mobile lodges also,
Oh,
and doing certain cities and all that. But then all of a sudden, you also see this, that it's getting too big, because then Freemasonry is like interesting, because a lot of people come there, often like, okay, the thinkers of society, the people from science, also people from religion, people who have something economically to say, owners of factories and all that. But can you imagine that all of a sudden this could be dangerous for the powers that be?
Yeah.
Not direct, but if you let to get that about, I can imagine that for the powers that be, that's like that they get like on their nerves. And then all of a sudden, once they made use of it first, they said, okay, but from a certain degree in the army, you cannot be a member anymore. You see, they're already pulling their players back, you see, and restricting it. Not like forbidding it, but restricting it in order to get control.
Oh, that's
You
crazy.
see, we are not a fraction that works on its own, and we are often like used and misabused. And you can also understand that, in all totalitarian regimes, Freemasonry got forbidden. And especially, of course, during communist time. The first thing that they did is like forbid the lodges. And even though, of course, if we could say this and talk about politics, so there was some political influence, of course, during the times that people were fighting for liberal ideas. Especially in Belgium, they made sure that there was also like free schools, so to say, or that people can go to university without pledging an oath to a certain religion. I think that's something really strong and a good achievement. But it's also like the proof. So then they were somehow, leaders in the liberal fraction, or even like in the socialist fraction. But they also often got to compete each other, because whilst they were like friends in the fight for the free schools, there were like opposites, like in politics, and their idea on what the state should be. So minimal or maximum influence, you see, and there they often also fell out of each other. That is like crazy, because people, that's what happens. But it's also the proof that even, you see, like, then you could reason, okay, but they are really behind communist or socialist plots. You see, but that's also not true, because there was socialism, but from the moment it got really to the extreme and became communism, they forbid the lodges. You see, but I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization, not even mine, where I stand really behind that. But now I'm also maybe speaking a little bit on behalf of the irregular fraction, because we also have to talk the truth. You see, even that they are like apolitical, they are not behind all that things. And the same goes, of course, for the far right. During fascism and all that, lodges were forbidden. And there comes the Judeo idea of world dominance, coming from out of that fraction. You see, but we don't match with totalitarian regimes. You see, that should also be like a proof of that. Left, right, extremist, because we aim for the unification. That's also like a spiritual, but also, practical way of going about it. See, but of course there happen things, and also, for instance, like in Italy, but also reactionary. So a lot of Freemasons, because there were, all of a sudden there was this, Europe is something really strange, it's like wars and inside jobs, and, it's like, but all of a sudden, so the French came to play the balls in Italy. And a lot of Freemasons said, okay, we have to do something against that. But from out of the lodge, they could not take a political stance. So a lot of Freemasons back in the day, they had like a fringe group, a more combatant group, to fight that. You see, those are things that happen as well. But that is not representative for Freemasonry. You also have to say, okay, this is like Freemasonry, and this is, and of course, there will be misconduct. That would be a blatant lie to somehow claim that no Freemason does something wrong. That would be bang out of order. Then you should tar and feather me right away, because I cannot even know that, but I assume it. You see, but that's not something that would not happen in other scenes, or business or whatever. You see, wherever people are, it's like dangerous that they don't conduct in a way it should be, But then they did not learn anything from Freemasonry, because you have to become a better man from that.
No, I get that. Yeah. That's interesting then for banning, because going back on that. Well, one, the independence thing is funny, because that's the big conspiracy theory, is they believe George Washington was a Freemason, and that's why he started that whole thing, so that they could practice freely. So like the Illuminati coming at the same time as the George Washington conspiracies. There's a lot there. But also, if you're being banned everywhere, though, and I know keeping away from the politics, is there somebody, though, that advocates for you so that you can not be banned? You know what I mean? So that you could practice freely. I know like a couple of religions have done that, like someone who advocates for that. If that makes sense.
No, I think I don't understand the question 100%.
Well, because if you're, like you said, if you're not going to get involved like in politics or anything like that, but yet people are banning you or not allowing, if you're a Freemason, you can't move forward. So they're literally telling you have to choose between Freemasonry or the support of that, even though you've already pledged it. Is there like a spokesperson that would advocate and be like, this is unfair, and fight the challenge, or fight something like one person so everyone can still not get involved, but one person can advocate for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we have only like official spokesman. So I'm not like an official spokesman. So, within regular Freemasonry, that's like always like easy, because we have like the most simple, clear, and workable ID. So no politics discussion, no religious discussion. So we are like a spiritual movement.
Well, no, yeah, and I got that. But like when people say, we're going to ban Freemasons, is that just like you accept it and then don't join it? Or does somebody go in there and try and stop that ruling?
Yeah. But nobody, if there are like political changes, for instance, someone, grabs Belgium, and they say, okay, Freemasonry is forbidden. So we have like a king, but that's like nowadays like a ceremonial thing, but they take the king off out of the throne, and someone else is going to sit there. Marches, for instance. And then they say, okay, Freemasonry is forbidden, and I'm the boss now. Yeah, then it's forbidden. But then we have to, we'll do something in my garden house.
Oh, yeah, that is. Okay, yeah, got it.
I invite my brother. You see, but officially, if the state says, okay, we forbid it it did happen in the past.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I didn't know if there was somebody who decided, like, hey, this is our representative. He's going to fight it for us,
Yeah, but there's also like regulations, in the country. We have also freedom of, freedom of unity. No, I think I don't say the right word. Freedom of, making a sports club or a debate club. These are like free things, they cannot take that away. And normally they cannot say, you have to stop this.
Okay, well, that's good.
At least if you're doing not something that is like forbidden or criminal.
Yeah, well, then you're getting into like, a whole other category of criminal stuff, because obviously no religion would be condoning criminal stuff, well, hopefully.
Yeah, but can you imagine that's also, that's also a thing, that's maybe like a strange comparison. The powers that be, that would not be a smart thing to do.
Yeah,
You see,
that's true.
same with Freemasonry. If you wanted to, or if you have like want to do bad things, why would you join a group that's somehow known? Or you see, that's not something that you can use if you want to do something wrong. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like if you have like, because here my neighbors have like a big tree with cherries. So if you want to pick some cherries, I would not do that with like a lamp on my head, like a syringe. I would have to go in the night,
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a comparison I'm making.
No,
But
I love
anyway,
that.
here we go again.
Like a stick.
That's what I said, the world does not need a parrot, and I have to explain it with comprehensible concept, but I don't know what I achieved with this. But anyway, let me know. But this is the thing, that would be like crazy, isn't it? If you want to do things wrong, why do you want to belong with a group that's somehow already in the lens of people?
Definitely.
Oh my God, what I'm saying here. Again, next question.
No,
I
that's
think I
good.
need a nap or something.
No, and that, so yeah, because it is in the lens of like the public, and it is like something seen, but there's still like so much mystery around it, just like how you become a Mason, like, and even where did it start, because that's a huge conspiracy theory too on where it officially started, because like we just talked about, George Washington, Illuminati, but like people say Templars, and like exactly how it went from like the stonemasons to Freemasonry.
Yeah, there was discussion about that, so we already talked about that previous time. So
yeah.
overall idea is that we are the natural heirs of the medieval stone Masons, stone Masons guilds.
Yeah.
And
I remember, I do know that.
So all of a sudden the narrative goes, okay, but the numbers were dwindling of those free stone masons, but other people were not like active or operative stone masons, like the spiritual ideas behind it, because I explained the previous episode that like the medieval guilds, they were initiatic societies, so don't underestimate. And there is somehow, because it's like really interesting morning, like geometry and all that, all included, Pythagoras, they are also like, legend and myths of the Freemasons, but there's also something to say for the mythological history. You see the perennial philosophy and all that, but that's somehow abstracting. We have to talk about that maybe like in the next episode, because the function of myths and all that is really like important if you want to be like a regular traditional Freemason. That's also why I want to explain the ontology of it, also that you can have the utmost experience and the utmost beneficial, transformative things inside of as a personal development. But overall, it's assumed that, after Renaissance, in the times of Enlightenment, especially that era, that somehow people who were not operative Masons somehow joined those lodges. This is debated. I have to admit that. Some people say, okay, but they started just somewhere. But there is also proof, tiny proof, that it really did happen, that there were lodges, with operative Masons who had like a few members who were not operative. But there's also like this idea of convergent evolution, what you also see during history. It's like a product of the time, and it has its couleur locale. That's the overall idea.
I didn't get most of it. It kind of like froze for just a second, but I mean, I got the majority of what you're saying when you're just saying people join lodges and then came in with the rest.
That they from there on somehow, even if they were not active stone builders, that they from there on, and there is proof of it, that they had like also like a few people who were not active Freemasons in the lodge, but from there on they reason, okay, but from there they took over this like an overall idea, something to say for that. I cannot know that for sure. But what is for sure, that we go further on the regulations, on the myths, of those old stonemasons guild. That's like a fact, and there's like a spectrum of people thinking, okay, this is what's really the case, or well, it's like I don't know. But there's also something to say for that we're the heirs of an overall mystery tradition, and this is actually undeniable truth. And here in can also come like the Templars and all that, which we need to zoom in on the next episode, because I have to also give some more context about that.
Yes, because
and therefore I have to explain what is like mythical history. In order to explain this, I really have to fill in more than that. I have to explain the functionality of myths in general.
Yeah, I think so too, because like you've got the different mythologies, because everyone thinks of mythology, not to get abstract, like they think mythology of the gods and goddesses in this story, but really there's like the mythology of a culture, then the mythology of like society, mythology of like family, and then your personal mythology that you have yourself,
and these myths are practical because we have to step in those myths. And how can you step in those myths once and forever?
Yeah.
To do rituals.
Yeah.
To step inside of that, using symbols, using rituals, an archaic, intrinsic way, natural, organic way.
Yeah.
To step in the ontology of life. Is this strange? From rational standpoint, yes, it is strange. But from a human standpoint, it's totally natural. But this was also what I had to somehow understand or grasp. So to experience this really hit me on Freemasonry. Mm-hmm. You see, because I was also really raised atheist, and I really struggled with I was really much interested in spirituality and even like religion. I struggled to somehow really get something out of that. I somehow to really force me to believe something, I wanted that. I hoped for it. You see, but I could not easily experience it. So I don't know if I'm like fake now, but I experienced it. But by being there, being ritualistic, all the puzzles fell in the right place.
Yeah.
You see, and there was this, it was totally different as I could somehow grasp in my narrow mind. You see, and I'm really like an advocate for the method. I'm all about the method, But this is like a real archaic method, If I would be living like 2,000 years ago, I would be initiated in the Mithras tradition probably, or in the Germanic Mannerboot.
Yeah, there you go.
Achieving the same thing.
Yeah.
Different area, different cultural, but using the same concept.
Yeah.
We are not doing something strange, and that's how I see it. And again, I speak in own title. We are still like a traditional mystery tradition. But what makes us stand out is, of course, the center of union of regular Freemasonry. So no discussions about things that are dividers. So that's like unique. Another thing is like unique is our team of stone builders. But if you invest, what the Rosicrucians did, what Kabbalists do, what the Martinist order does, and all those fractions, because Europe had so many things, and not only Europe, all of the world.
Yeah.
Such a large palette of esoteric, initiatic societies, having often like the same aim, also borrowing the same symbols, even also like crossovers. That's like, but we still stand, and we are known for the symbols that we use. You have to understand, everyone, if you say Freemasonry and people know something about our symbols, they probably immediately get the compass and square.
Yeah.
We use that, but it's not symbols from us. They were from 1,000 years ago with Confucius, in order to measure the world.
Oh, yeah.
And you also see that in like religious depictions or emblemic books. You see that this has like a deeper symbolic structure.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we talk about, especially like in our organization, because we are deeply aimed for esoteric and spiritual wisdom. And of course, this is also a spectrum, Martin. This is also a spectrum. Some people are just like amused by it, and other people like I am like obsessed by it, And everyone Freemason for like in Germany or in France or in Holland, just reach out. I can give you the information that you need. So thank you everyone for watching, for your attention. Be back next time.
Yes. Yay. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.